And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, recognised by Euromoney Cash Management Survey 2024 for pioneering cash management solutions for their clients. Good evening. Welcome to The Money Show tonight. Look, I suspect the most important thing that's probably going to happen over the next couple of hours will be the President's big speech. Not very often that the President does an address to the nation on a Friday. We do expect him from around 7:30 or so. I say around because we've been told 7:30, but you know why I say around. And we do expect him to speak about the food contamination issue that, of course, we've had so many cases of, young children, some of them unfortunately passing away, losing their lives as a result of this. We will bring that to you the moment that it starts. Thabi Leoka today, confirmation that The Economist had been fined R500,000 by the JSE. And this is because of what one can only now presume and assume, and frankly was a lie about whether she had a doctorate or not. She said that she had a doctorate from the LSE. When questions were first asked, I think Business Day asked them first, she doubled down, and so far no evidence has come forward. The LSE says it has no record of giving her such a qualification or conferring one on her, rather. I suppose the question that we really need to look at, and we'll discuss this in quite a lot of detail in a moment, is firstly, if you're a stock exchange and you're all about the allocation of capital and the assignment of value, you have to punish lying. I mean, I think that to me makes sense. We have to accept that. The question, I suppose, is consistency. And is this the beginning, maybe, in an era of, I suppose, deliberate disinformation, of the JSE acting a little harsher in situations like this, a little more harshly, I should say. Anyway, we'll get some proper analysis on that in just a moment. The situation in the US still driving global markets. I mean, it's just amazing to think that someone like Robert Kennedy, who said he had a word in his brain, and I wish I was making that up, but I'm not, and who has, what's the polite word, unscientific views about pharmaceutical products. And you can rail against the pharmaceutical industry if you like. There's plenty of criticism, well-founded, well-evidenced criticism to make. That vaccines don't work is not one of the things that you can say. It's just not scientifically true at all. But he's now going to be the health secretary in the US. And the reason that I think this is important is not just the short-term impact on pharmaceutical shares in the US. It's that what is going to happen in the US is unstable and difficult to predict. And that is surely the issue. And you would think, if that were the case, that actually world markets might be in a little bit of a tailspin. There might be a little bit of panic, but there isn't. We'll find out why in a little while. I think that's going to be quite an important conversation with Professor Adrian Saville. And then Barlow World, the main story, the main stock exchange story of the day, certainly because of the offer from a group of Saudi investors to buy Barlow World. It would delist from the JSE. It would no longer be listed there, and that having a big impact on their share price. Good to hear from you tonight. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. I don't know if you have a view on the 500,000 Rand fine imposed by the JSE on Thabi Leoka for lying about her qualifications. Voice notes as well this evening on 072 702 1702.
702. Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, a statement on the JSE Stock Exchange News Service this morning that from the JSE and several companies about Thabi Leoka, the economist who used to be an economics advisor to President Cyril Ramaphosa. The statement confirming she had been fined R500,000 by the JSE, banned from being a director for a period of 5 years, essentially because she lied about her qualifications. She claimed to have a doctorate from the LSE, which clearly she did not, and as far as I know, does not have. The JSE also saying they tried to engage with her about this, and she didn't respond to their requests. And you remember the first reports from Business Day about Leoka, and then from Daily Maverick that were shown to be true. The LSE says it has no record of her having such a qualification. Claude de Busick is the founder and CEO at Unomix. Claude, good evening. You know this. I mean, Thabi Leoka was someone I'd spoken to many times as a journalist. She'd been on this program many times. And still, after all of this time, I still find it shocking, amazing, actually, that all of this has happened.
Stephen, firstly, congratulations. Sure. I mean, you have big shoes to fill.
Thank you.
And it sounds, by what I hear, that you're starting to fill them just nicely.
Thank you very much.
It's quite an astounding story. But you were speaking about RFK Jr., and I can only think about the parallel between those who misrepresent their qualifications and those who do not misrepresent their wacky views and are given supreme responsibility. We live in a very strange age, the age where up is down is up, in is out, and truth is lie, and lie is truth. And so in this particular world, it's reassuring that an institution like the JSE is, as you said yourself, finally taking these matters responsibly and seriously. I mean, people will say, well, it's just an economist, right? PhD economist. Well, no, economic advisor to the presidency is a serious job. You wouldn't want your lawyers to have, a fake or no law degree, and you would say, oh, what's a law degree? That's the thing, right? It's either we value education and qualifications and certifications because they create competence and trust, or it's a free-for-all and we have RFK as Secretary of Health. And then obviously, if we have a pandemic, well, we know what happens. So look, I mean, I played, and I said that, I disclosed that before coming on the show, that I played a bit of a role in outing her out. And it's not a personal thing, because actually I kind of was in alignment with her economic philosophy, which is kind of orthodox, and she was not unreasonable. But that's not the point.
Yeah, the point is you have to tell the truth. So, I mean, you make the point where we're in an era where down is up and disinformation's kind of the order of the day. For a stock exchange like the JSE, which is about the assignment of value, does it actually have a duty to act in these cases and to act quickly where it can, where the evidence is clear in cases like this? In other words, if this happens again, they need to do exactly the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the JSE has been in hot water, or had been in hot water before in relation to enforcing disclosure by companies of material disclosures that had impact on their true value, right? We can think about a few scandals. And I remember actually about 3-4 years ago an event I attended which had been organized with Grootes. And the JSE was present. Nikki was there, and I said, "I'm sorry." And so not Nikki. There was a spokesperson, and she said, "Well, we rely on the companies to tell us the truth." And I said, "Well, then what is your job? So can I just show up and say that I'm worth so and so much, I'm listed, and go ahead, and then I can take your investors, who are de facto your clients, right? The retail investors, the people who put their money. Can I just get them to invest in my company on the basis of false declaration, and you just wash your hands?" So it's good, that the JSE is doing this. I think a 500,000 rand fine is sufficiently robust to attract attention, and a sanction of 5 years as company director is robust enough to sanction. And hopefully what this will do, because it's not just the JSE, but it's also the companies and the different institutions who had her, and who in good faith relied on her, on her words. But we also need to have robust due diligence done on people, right?
And the companies need to do it too. I mean, from what I can see, none of them checked.
I mean, no. So the truth is that a couple of them checked and kind of just decided not to go ahead, right? But it's a small business community, right? So I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Let's not create waves. It's just not something that's done. Well, I'm sorry, it is something that's done. We have, right, as I have an incomplete PhD, right, in political science and economics. I took my coursework, I took my exams, I passed them with high distinction, I presented my doctoral proposal. But I decided that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be an academic. So if you look at my CV, it says Claude de Bessac, PhD, brackets, ABD, all but dissertation, which means that I'm not entitled to call myself Dr. de Bessac. And I would never do such a thing out of respect for those who have gone through this, out of respect for the institutions, out of respect for the profession.
Claude, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. Claude Debussy is the founder and CEO at Unomics. It's a story which seems over, but I suspect there might still be some developments at some point.
The Money Show.
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
And DSTV channel 856.
So the last couple of weeks, and I presume you've been paying attention, have seen a series of events that could really change completely the way the global economy works. Donald Trump's coming back into office as US president on the promise that he'll impose massive tariffs on China and Mexico and tariffs of 20% on imports from the rest of the world. You heard predictions last night that the government he will lead could make Bitcoin a legal tender in the United States. He's appointed a health secretary who once said he had a worm in his head and doesn't believe in vaccines. You would think then, as a rational investor, that markets might be panicking, that around the world there would be widespread fear about the future. By and large, this is not happening. Professor Adrian Saville, Professor of Economics and Finance at GIBS. Adrian, good evening. If Trump implements even half of what he's promised, there's going to be much higher inflation, trade wars, possibly the beginning of the end of the era of globalization as we know it. Why are markets not panicking?
It is hard to put the market response alongside the Trump reality. And, first, Trump isn't in power yet, so let's just put that on the table. But even so, we've got fairly good line of sight as to what he intends to do. And you've captured it all. He's going to challenge established foreign policy relationships. He brings a whole new set of ingredients for business and most especially supply chain, international trade. And then he has implications for climate, which we can, sort of infer on balance are negative. So, the Trump cocktail is overwhelmingly more risky and even riskier because of the fact that we don't really know what he will do.
Okay, so, I would think then that, Trump could come in and literally spark panic. If he comes in and on day one says, well, here's a 60% tariff on China, on goods from China, that would make me panic.
Yes, and that'll have implications for, as you pointed out, inflation, which in turn has implications for interest rates. That knocks on to business profitability. But in the immediate term, Trump might be good for business. And so, we have to try and figure out, what is it that markets are pricing? Are they pricing what they can see in the short term? A Fed that's going to give you interest rate relief. You're going to have tax cuts for businesses. Trump is going to be pro big business, easier regulation, etc. Now you can see that with far greater certainty than you can, one or two hills away. And so we have to separate, although these are, we have to separate in concept, we have to try and figure out what is risk, i.e. knowable, and what is uncertainty, i.e. unknowable. And what we might be seeing is markets pricing the things that they know, the tax cuts, the interest rate cuts, easier regulation, and they might just be walking past or ignoring because they can't price it. The uncertainty.
I suppose if you can't price it, you actually don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. Where do I put it?
Yeah. So what do I actually do? And if there is going to be a trade war between the US and China, well, everyone's in trouble anyway, so I'm just going to be with everybody else. Is there a little bit of a herd mentality here too?
I think you've hit it on the head, that if you don't know how to price it, or if you can't even, foresee, what that cocktail looks like, with Trump's range of foreign policies, or what it might mean if China locks out Taiwan, those are almost impossible to try and map with a high degree of certainty, and so you rather leave it unpriced. And if you can't see it, you don't price it. It just stays off the table, and then you wait for the reality because you can't price the unknowable, and so you have to wait for the known. You have to wait for the fact or the observable.
There's another question which is quite messy in a way, but the sort of view has been, or as I've understood it, is that markets are useful because they're transparent and they send signals to the people who govern. So if you're doing the wrong thing, and Liz Truss is just the perfect example of this, because if you are the British Prime Minister and you do something that markets don't like, that is just irrational, markets will tell you. And therefore you have to change your course. And if you're Liz Truss and you don't, you'll be out. I don't know.
You last 40-odd days,
Yes. I don't know if that applies with Donald Trump, in that I don't know if he's going to read the signals. And isn't that a problem for the market, that they're going to be, markets are dealing with someone who won't respond to them? I mean, he might, but we don't know is the big question.
You know, Stephen, if we do take direction from markets, if markets are such powerful signalers, then what markets are indicating in the last week or so is that, on balance, the Trump election is really good news. I'd put two caveats around it. The first is what you might be seeing is just the pricing of certainty, because what we didn't know 10 days ago was whether it would be Harris or Trump. So we now know that it's Trump. And, even if that is a worse outcome or a more uncertain outcome, bizarrely, you've now got like a derivative on uncertainty. At least you know now what you are dealing with. Not to try and be too abstract, but we have greater certainty. The second point is that, on balance, as much as we can, do a whole lot of hand-wringing about what Trump might mean, we simply don't know. But for foreign policy, but what we do know is the things that he is likely to do, which are good for profit, big business, lighter regulation. You made the point earlier about Bitcoin becoming a recognized currency, etc.
Professor Adrian Saville, really appreciate the thoughts and the insights. Certainly a bit more clarity in my mind now. Thank you. Adrian Saville's Professor of Economics and Finance at GIBS.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Tato Moshego is a portfolio manager at Sanlam Private Wealth. Tato, good evening to you. Thanks for your time tonight. Well, Barlow World, an offer from a group of Saudi investors, and of course the share price up quite nicely.
Well, good evening, Stephen. Yes, it appears that the consortium's offer is being seriously considered by the board, and investors, at least at first glance, appear to be taking it quite positively. Of course, with the CEO himself involved, one could call it a management buyout, and that always seems like there's a slightly higher probability of it being concluded. So at this stage, no details yet, but larger shareholders have been consulted, and we'll have to wait and see, but very interesting developments.
There's quite a lot of sort of international economic news. Q3 GDP figures both in the UK and Japan. Japan, firstly, it's an annualized 0.9% expansion for their economy. It's slowing from the previous 3 months, and obviously the Japanese economy has been sort of where it is for a long time.
It has indeed. The previous quarter was quite negative, minus 1.1% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But we're definitely seeing a sharp slowdown on an annualized basis. What we have seen is, of course, the change in leadership at the top, with new Prime Minister Ishiba coming in. And we have seen a bit of a rotating door the past few years in Japanese leadership. We know that there's a change at the central bank, and they're now obviously becoming slightly more hawkish, even saying that they could see rates reaching 1% by this time next year, which is, of course, very different from where we are at the moment. But inflation, perhaps more of their focus than growth currently, which doesn't bode well, at least for economic performance in the short to medium term.
I mean, a new Prime Minister in the UK as well, their economy grew by 0.1%. I mean, I presume that's the smallest measure between July and September. And they've just had a budget, and there's plenty of promises of more bad news to come for that economy.
Some similarities with Japan and the UK, indeed, as far as rotating prime ministers the past few years. But yes, the results weren't great from the UK economy this past quarter. The main driver of the economy being services, was quite flat, whereas perhaps one bright spot would be construction, which rose about 0.8%. We do know that Labour is looking to build more housing, and that could, and part of the tax hikes that we saw in the recent budget could be allocated towards that. So somewhat positive for the property developers and construction sector. But overall, without I suppose, consumer sentiment and spending from consumers, we could continue to see some rather tepid figures from the UK.
In the US, we've just been talking, of course, about Donald Trump, the incoming president again. Robert Kennedy, going to be the health secretary, or nominated to be the health secretary, I should say, has some unscientific views. Already some pharmaceutical companies last night were losing a bit of value as a result.
Well, yes, indeed. It could be quite a tough congressional hearing for his appointment. He was, at the current moment, persona non grata with the Democratic Party, but his views are unconventional with regards to health, and they are, from a commercial perspective, one could say negative for both the pharmaceuticals and the food manufacturing companies. He has, of course, mentioned his skepticism with regards to vaccine, and the health secretary has the right to overrule the FDA in terms of drug approval, so that could slow down any new drug development from the pharmaceutical companies, as well as from the food producers. Of course, we know that there is a lot of spending in terms of nutrition and guidance that comes from governments towards the general public, and he has said that he is more than willing to shut down that entire department and fire all the employees. So, of course, that would have a dramatic impact potentially in terms of diets in the US, and that would target, of course, the industrial food producers. So one can have different views with regards to the societal impacts, but from a purely commercial perspective, it could be quite negative for those two sectors.
Tato Mashiko, thanks very much indeed. Portfolio Manager at Sanlam Private Wealth. Really appreciate the time. You're with The Money Show, just gone 6:30.
The Money Show.
The Friday File.
The Friday File.
Don't forget the Friday Biz Blitz in a couple of moments. 011 8830702 and 021 4460567. So when you go home tonight and you're sitting on the couch or maybe on your bed and you're wondering, actually, I know it's November, but there's a little bit of a chill in the air, and I'm just going to pull something over myself. What's it going to be? It's going to be the old dressing gown that your partner just can't stand. Is it going to be a blanket? The chances are it is going to be a blanket. And you get blankets, blankets, and blankets. Let me explain. You get synthetic blankets that kind of are okay, but they're not great. You get a much warmer woolen blanket. And then you get something that's a little different. Brian Bechet is the co-founder of Blankets for Africa. Brian, good evening. You make mohair products in particular. What is it about mohair and blankets that is so interesting and so powerful?
Well, Stephen, firstly, thank you very much for inviting us back on your show. My wife Rosalind was the creative genius behind Blankets from Africa. And you're correct in saying we use mohair quite a lot in our operation. But we initially started with using pure merino wool from the Karoo. And we branched out into pure cotton, locally grown, of course. And we found that mohair gives a slightly lighter touch to the merino wool blanket, and allows people to use it through those in-between seasons, autumn and spring. An unfortunate perception of mohair is that it's very scratchy. But the way mohair is produced these days, one finds that it is not, in fact, scratchy on the skin at all. And the pockets of air that it traps between the threads provides a warming effect when wrapped around you. So it's lighter to the touch, it's lighter in weight, but it serves a similar purpose.
How do you actually produce it? I mean, what do you have to do to the raw material to get that effect?
Stephen, we don't produce the mohair raw material at all. We buy that in from the mohair producers and the mills. What we do is we run a social initiative, Blankets from Africa, and I think that's the critical part about this operation. started about 7 years ago by my wife, Rosalind, who recognized that, unfortunately, the incredibly high unemployment rate in this country was driving more and more, especially rural women, to apply for government grants. And as we all know, the logistics of delivering those government grants to the people is getting more and more difficult, especially with the demise of the post office. And she started out by deciding that she wanted to teach rural women how to knit products. And she did this in such a way that these products were not going to be sold on the side of the road, but were going to be made to a quality that one could sell to the public, to retailers, to even export markets. And what she did was started with 8 to 10 people, ladies in the Eastern Cape, and that was 2017. And what we do is we supply these ladies with the raw materials, the wool, the cotton, or the mohair. We provide them with the patterns and the needles. And as and when they produce something, we pay them directly. So we carry the cost of the production. We then bring the garments and items back. We clean them, label them, market them in places where the rural ladies would not have access to. And right now, we're providing over 100 families with an income. They've come to rely on blankets from Africa for that.
So when you look at a flower, when you look at when you look at a blanket, and you need to design a blanket, right? I mean, there are a few things that are obvious. I mean, I imagine the color of the blanket really matters. It does need to look in a certain way, and the color of it, the design of it, obviously determines who's going to buy it to a large extent.
Absolutely. When one's dealing with pure merino wool, one tends to stay with the natural cream look of that wool. It's got a particular attraction to foreign tourists who shop with us. It's very, very authentic and original. With the pure cotton products, what we do is we buy cotton that's been organically dyed to a number of different colors, and that has a particular appeal, especially for babies and mothers in nurseries. And then mohair, of course, comes in a variety of colors, which the mohair mills themselves decide upon. We haven't got to the size yet where we will attempt to dictate or request the mills to produce a certain quantity in a particular color, but they have those colors available. The other thing is the design and pattern of any objects on those blankets. For example, we started out life with inserting colored parts on the baby blanket, which goes to the story of the Karoo merino sheep being the heart of the country and the effort to keep babies' hearts warm.
So, I mean, and the design of it and the size of it, these things matter too. Does it take a lot to design a blanket? I mean, on one level, I realize, no, a blanket can be relatively simple. I can't tell you the excitement in my house when we were watching the movie Black Panther and the children realized that they had a blanket in the same pattern as some of the Wakanda warriors, if you recall. I think more of a Lesotho design than our own. But I mean, so the design can really matter, even though a blanket is relatively simple.
Yes, it can. What we found, though, is the Lesotho type blankets, those are more of a country-specific design. And what we've done is to try and keep the designs as simple as possible. So you'll find a lot of plain designs with not a lot of different colors, but rather a difference in the stitching that goes into the blanket. So there might be a pattern of a heart stitched into the blanket itself or knitted into the blanket itself, but of the same color. And I think the challenge for us is to ensure that we're able to continue to source pure merino wool and pure South African cotton and mohair at reasonable prices, because the drought of a few years ago caused the cost of raw materials to literally rocket, not by 20 or 30%, but more like 200 or 300%. And it's our view is that the more blankets from Africa sell, the more we employ people who would otherwise previously be destitute.
I mean, selling a blanket, okay, there's a huge number of different blankets on the market. Do you have to do something special to just penetrate the market? I mean, just to be seen, you'd have to do something that other people aren't really doing.
Yes, we do. And I think that's where a real game changer for blankets from Africa arrived 3 years ago in the form of the Oranje Farmers Market, which is a very, very popular market here in Cape Town, run by Cheryl Lazinski and Klaus Friedman, two really dynamic ladies. And that gave us a physical outlet and platform so people could physically see and feel and touch what they were going to buy, as opposed to seeing it on the online store and the website. And that's made an enormous difference for us. Cheryl and Kaz have recognized the contribution that Blankets from Africa makes to unemployment debacle in this country, and have been enormously supportive in providing us with a stand, for which, of course, we contribute. But that was a big game changer for us. And I think what we try to differentiate ourselves with is the quality of the blankets. They're not factory produced. Every single blanket is hand knitted out of pure South African grown farmed merino wool or cotton, mohair. And we certainly find that, especially down at the Johannesburg market, the number of tourists that pass through that market are amazing. And they cannot believe the quality and the natural fibers that they then can take home to France, Germany, United States, anywhere in the world.
Do you have a lot of repeat business? In other words, someone will buy one for themselves and then they're back on the website or back at the market to buy another one as a gift.
Yes,
do you find that?
Yes, we do. What's been particularly heartening is, whilst my wife is the creative genius behind this, I'm more of the weekend unpaid help. And, I attend the market regularly and see the people that come back. And incredibly, over the last 5 years, we've seen people from all over the world who arrive back holidaying in South Africa for the second or third time and say, I was here a year ago, 2 years ago, and I bought one of these blankets and my friend now wants one, or my daughter is having a baby and she would like one. So we're getting that more and more, which is very exciting for us.
Brian, thank you so much for your time on The Money Show. I really appreciate it. Brian Bechet is co-founder of Blankets for Africa. They're made out of mohair, so they really are something very, very different. Brian, thanks very much. Really do appreciate the time.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes.
All right, time for the Friday Biz Blitz on The Money Show this evening. You know the number, 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. You know, of course, how it works. If you get the answer right, we move to the next question. If you get the answer wrong, we move to the next caller. First question on the Friday Biz Blitz for you on The Money Show this evening. The iconic TV character, Archie Maroka, was played by which renowned actor? The iconic fictional TV character, Archie Maroka, was played by which renowned actor? If you've been listening through the week, really, you have no excuse to not know the answer to this. Archie Maroka, who played him on television? 011 883 0702 021 446 0567.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, recognized by Euromoney Cash Management Survey 2024 for pioneering cash management solutions for their clients. It is, of course, the Friday Biz Blitz, 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. First question this evening. Which fictional TV character is iconic? Archie Maroka was played by which renowned actor? Marps in Lenasia. Marps, hi.
Hi, how are you, man?
I'm well. Go for it.
Good. Yeah, hello to the listeners and to yourself too. The person who was playing
it was indeed Marps. You're obviously listening when we spoke to me as my money guest on Monday evening. Okay, the big fight this weekend, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. It's being streamed live on which platform?
No, I'm lost with that.
Come on, it's not that difficult, Marps. I mean, the advertising is everywhere. Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, it's being streamed live. There's a clue. On which platform?
I'd rather take a guess and say View.
Say what?
View TV.
I'm afraid not, Marps. Sorry about that. 011 8830702. This is, easy. If you've been awake over the last week, you'll know it. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. It's being streamed live over which platform do you think that is? Which platform netted this fight? Come on. 011 8830702 and 021 4460567. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I suspect I'll be asleep and at the beginning of the fight, and one of them will be asleep at the end. Let's go to Jabu in Alberton. Jabu, hi. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Who got it?
Netflix.
It is Netflix, Jabu, yes. Tyson's due to earn $20 million from the fight. Jake Paul will get $40 million. Okay, next question. Bechet, which is the parent company for Virgin Active, Premier Foods, and New Look, is backed by which local billionaire? One of our famous billionaires who backs Bechet. Do you know who it is?
Is it Rupert?
It's not Rupert.
Let me take another guess.
Come on, Jabu from Alberton.
Patricia Zip.
I'm going to give you one last guess, Jabu.
This is a billionaire.
It's a billionaire, a South African billionaire.
South African. No, I'll take it.
All right.
Pass on this one. Okay.
Sorry, Jabu. Okay, 011 8830702. Bechet, the parent company, is to Virgin Active, Premier Foods, not Feuds, Foods, and New Look. It's backed by which local billionaire? It's a great question, actually. 011 8830702 and 021 4460567. We spoke to Bechet this week about their results that were coming out. We've got questions as well about the chicken business on The Money Show this evening. But first, we have to get through the question around Bechet, which, as you know, is the parent company to Virgin Active, Premier Foods, and New Look. And, of course, they have had a very interesting time of it. Some parts of the business seem to be doing quite well, some not doing quite well. I think we might have time to hear from Nelson from Shawelo in Soweto. I think we might have time. Nelson, hi. Do you know the answer?
Nelson. Yes, I know the answer.
Who is it?
Yeah, the answer is Elon Musk.
It's not Elon Musk, I'm afraid, Nelson. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Yes.
It's okay. He's not responsible for everything, just most of it. Nelson, thank you. I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to leave it. Do I give the answer? I'm looking. Are you sure? Okay, they say I have to give the answer. The answer, of course, is Christo Visa. Kicking yourself, aren't you? At 7 o'clock.